Hello everyone. So I'm doing a video from a different location today. So a couple of days ago on 28th, we had this UiPath Dev Dive session where we talked about document understanding in detail. Um, that was a very interesting session, and we had a lot of questions from the audience. So that's why I thought of doing this follow-up video to address some of those topics or the questions that were asked during the session, so that I can do a detailed explanation here. So to start with, one of the questions we got is, what are the products available for UiPath Document Understanding? So when you say document understanding, it's not just one product that we are talking about. It's multiple products that work together to give you the best output. So to start with, the first one that you can think of is the AI Center. What happens in the AI Center? That's where you have all these pre-trained models, and you can train your custom models there through the document manager, which is a part of AI Center. So through this, you can train and host your models for extraction and classification. Second product is the UiPath Studio itself and the activities. So for document understanding, you have some specialized set of activities. One is the intelligent OCR activities. The other one is the document understanding ML activities. The third one, which is sort of a new and that's available for cross-platform development, is the UiPath document understanding activities. So these are the different activities specialized for document understanding related things, but depending on the other functionalities you need, you can use the other OCR activities or PDF activities or any other activity that's needed. Third one is the Action Center. The Action Center is used for human validation. So the documents that you process goes through classification and a data extraction. So whenever you require manual validation, you can push that information to Action Center and assign it to the users, and they can easily validate it through the interactive interface. The other one is the document understanding app, which is a part of the cloud platform as well. So with the app, you can easily spin up classifiers, extractors to process your documents. And the other thing is, this also is supporting the Forms AI, which is another part of document understanding, which you can use to use AI capabilities to extract structured data from structured documents. So these are all the different products that we have in UiPath Document Understanding, and this is available in on-prem as well as on the cloud. The other good question that I found is about the extracted data. So once you extract the data, whatever the model or the template that you use in document understanding, all the extracted data comes with a confidence. So every field will have its own confidence level for OCR and also for the extractor. So the question was like, I get about more than 84% confidence in the fields, but how can I know whether the extracted data is correct or wrong, or whether it's complete? So it's a good question, and the suggestion I have is, it's good to look at the confidence level so we get an idea how well the model is performing. But relying solely on the confidence is not the solution, as he asked in the session. So what we usually do is, so if it's like a invoice processing use case, or if it's like a purchase order processing use case, I'm just taking up a couple of usual examples because these are kind of easy to understand scenarios. So if it's a scenario like that, what we can do is, once you do the extraction, you can do a cross validation. So what I mean by cross validation is, you extract so for example, let's say invoice use case. So you take the invoice total, you take the tax amount, you have the net amount, and you can do some calculations based on this. So for example, if it's the invoice total, you can take the net amount, add the tax into it, or if you have any discounts, you can reduce that, and that gives you the total invoice amount. So you have the invoice amount as a field, and then you also can use the other fields to do that cross validation to see whether that's the same amount that you're getting. If it's not, then you can do some checks and even correct the extracted data. Same can be applied for the line items. So for example, if it's the line amount, you can do the unit price into quantity, and that gives you the line amount, and total of the line amounts gives you the net amount, for example. So by following these approaches, you can easily cross-check the data that you extract, validate it, and if something is missing, you can even update it without human validation step. So that's one method. The other method is, if you have this data somewhere in one of your internal sources, some application, maybe a ERP system, you can do an API call, you can connect to its database depending on how you can access the system, get that information and do the validation within the document understanding flow itself. So there will be like two validation steps. One is the cross validation with the extracted data. The other one is the cross validation with your internal applications. And once you do that, and when you decide whether the data is correct or wrong, and if still you need manual verification, then you can go for Action Center asking for verification. The next question I found in the chat is about, it's actually a very good use case. So this was about some invoice processing use case, and someone was asking, we get about 100 plus invoices from different suppliers, 100 plus layouts as invoices from different suppliers. So in this case, how to handle that kind of variations in the documents, and what's the best way to train the documents, because it takes a lot of time if you have like so many different layouts, and how to train, and it's a very good question. So as a solution, what I was thinking is, so if you get that kind of variations in the invoices, if you have a wide range of suppliers, instead of directly going and automating all those things, the best place to start is do a quick evaluation, try to understand what are the most frequent suppliers, and because that's where the impact is the most. So identify the most frequent suppliers and identify what kind of layouts they provide as the first step. Then as the second step, what you can do is use the pre-trained invoice model in the AI Center, activate it, and just run some of those invoices through that pre-trained model to see how it performs the extraction. If it can do a good extraction, then you might not need to spend a lot of time trying to retrain a model from scratch. And if you see any areas where it is not properly extracting, then I would say do an evaluation and see for which fields it is not properly extracting, for which line items, and for which regular fields, and for which particular layouts this is happening. So these things you can identify if you run an evaluation pipeline through different layouts. And once you have that result, By looking at it, you can decide, okay, which layouts require a little bit of extra training, and you can use those layouts in the document manager in the AI center to do some labeling and fine tuning the model. That could be a good way to start. And then finally, you can keep expanding and include all the other layouts as well. There was another question about how many documents are needed to perform a data labeling. So for example, if it's an invoice use case, someone was asking whether we need about 200, 300 documents, or whether we need even more documents to do the labeling to get an accurate answer. Well, the answer for this is it kind of depends on the use case, because these models are pre-trained, and depending on your use case, it may differ how many documents you need. So for example, if you have documents that goes into multiple languages, then you may need a much higher number of documents to train, depending on how many languages you are going to use. In addition, if you have invoices that span across multiple pages, especially the line items, so these things will decide how many documents that you usually need to process the training for your scenario. So it's generally the layout, it's the complexity of the document, the number of languages you plan to train the model with. So those are some of the main things that will affect the number of documents that will be needed. But again, as a start, identify all those scenarios and see how well your model is performing, the pre-trained model, and then decide how many documents that you will need. To support that decision, if you go into the document understanding and app, this is, and from there, if you try to set up an extractor and try to train, that will give you a small prompt where you can do a little bit of configuration, saying how many custom fields that you are going to extract, how many predefined fields that you are going to extract. Same applies for line items. Depending on those things, it will also give you kind of an indication how many documents you will generally need to extract or train that kind of a model. When it comes to file data collection, the part where you collect the documents that require processing. So this collection can happen through various ways. The data collected or the documents collected could be from a shared drive, it could be from some application, it could be through email, it can be any location. So how to decide whether you are processing the same document again and again? This again depends on the use case. So for example, if you have all the documents in a shared drive and you need to process these documents on a daily basis, let's say at a scheduled time, like for example, let's say every day at 6 p.m. So in this case, what you can do is to make sure that you're always getting the latest documents and you don't do the duplicates, is one approach is to look at the time, the file created date or the file modified date, and based on that you can capture all the documents that created before that specific timestamp and then get all those things into processing. But that may not be enough, because so yesterday the process starts at 6 p.m. At what time did the process finish, and what are the documents that came in after that time? So there might be a little bit of an overlap there. So those are the little things that you can address. So there are like multiple ways to do this. One is to check the time, one of the approaches that I kind of did is handling it through the queue itself, because as I explained in the use case that I presented in the dev dive session, I mentioned that for that specific use case we used three processes. One is the document collection, then comes the document understanding solution, and then the part that goes and updates into one of the applications. So for this data collection module, when you extract the data, that data goes and logs or loads into orchestrator queue. The queue has the entire history of the documents that we process. So in this case, what you can do is you can always cross-check the previous data in the orchestrator queue and see whether that document got processed before. This can be done by looking at the file path. It can be done by the execution status in the queue, whether it was successful, whether it was failed, what really happened. So in that case, if the file failed yesterday, you can even pick it up today and try to reprocess it if it's not a business exception. So those are some approaches that you can follow, and you can even use the queue to perform those kind of validations. The other question we had was, when you get a lot of documents, basically let's say these documents are unstructured, and each file will contain multiple documents. So how can we figure out from where one set of documents ends and from where the next one starts, basically from which page? So the question was, at the end of each section there is a stamp or something like that which we can use to identify as the end of the file. So in those cases, how can we use the classification to identify from where the document can be split? So in this case, we can have several approaches. One, I think this question was also answered in the session, but I also just wanted to give some points here. So when it comes to document splitting, the option that you can use is the intelligent keyword classifier, as explained in the session. Because intelligent keyword classifier supports document splitting, and this will require some keywords. So how to do these keywords is, with intelligent keyword classifier, it trains automatically. So you don't need to define the keywords by yourself. So in this case, what you can do is, when training the document, you don't feed this big document that has all the documents in it and get it trained. The best way to do it is, you do the split first to train the model. So let's say you have 10 documents in this file. You do the split by yourself, create 10 separate files, and then you can train the intelligent keyword classifier with those 10 files, saying, hey, this is how the file looks like for this type, this is how the file will look like for classification B and C, and likewise. So that way the model will know these are the documents that you may get for this kind of document types. The same thing can be applied when you don't know, or in a big document when you have different pages that can fit into separate classification type. For example, so let's say there's a category called legal documents, and in your big file that has about 100 pages, for example, the pages that can go into this legal document can be in different places. So the page 5 can be a legal document, page 10 can be a legal document, 15, 23, and likewise. So in these scenarios, how you can identify the each and every page that goes into a specific type, because this one pager can be a single document, or it could be a series of pages like 24, 25, 26, for example, that could be going into this legal documents. So this is slightly a different scenario than the previous one, because here the pages are also affected. So if you need to look at that level of granularity to see where each and every page goes into, depending on the complexity of your use case, in that case, one of the methods that I tried and it is working is, again, instead of pushing the entire file and training, saying this is all the documents that you can find, I kind of split again this document, big document, into smaller files that indicates all the pages that goes into that. So basically, if the pages are on a sequence, so let's say from page 24 to 27 is one document that can usually get. So what we can do is we can combine those pages into one file and say, okay, this is one type of a document. Or else the other approach could be, you can split page by page and then train the model saying, hey, for this document type, these are the different pages that I can get, and if you see these pages, classify it as legal documents. So these are the different methods that you can do. And the question was also around identifying a stamp at the end of each section. So this cannot be done through the classification activity, because these mostly rely on the keywords. So for this one, what you can do is you can maybe look for object detection kind of models to see what kind of stamps you have there, and train the model on to focus more on those stamps and identify whether the stamp exists and where it exists, and then you can try to split it from there. So it's something similar to the signature extraction, for example. So in the form extractor, you have this capability to extract the signatures, right? So when you extract the signature, it also tells you where that signature is. So these are different methods that you can do to identify and split your complex documents into smaller components or smaller files. So this is the last question. And it's also an interesting question because it also talks something around some of the latest topics that we are talking about. Extracting content from unstructured data. So for example, let's say you have like legal documents that could be very much unstructured. It could be lengthy. You can have paragraphs of text, different sections. So how efficiently can we use document understanding to extract meaningful information from those kind of documents? Legal documents, it's one. Research papers, articles, all those things fit into this category of unstructured content. Why I say it's unstructured? Because these documents do not follow a specific structure, and you have paragraphs of text, and you need to find information within those paragraphs. And sometimes you may need to extract the paragraph itself. Sometimes you may need to extract the most important points from the entire document. You may need to summarize it, or you may need to do some entity data extraction like organization names, people names, and likewise. So depending on all these things, what's the best way to extract the content? So with the latest capabilities that UiPath is offering, they also have this generative extractor to extract documents that are unstructured. I think so with that, you can easily define certain amount of prompts depending on the task that you need to do, depending on how you need to extract the data, whether you want to identify the most important points, whether you want to summarize it, whatever that you want to do. Based on that, define the prompts easily and use the generative extractor to easily extract that information. And you can also do a little bit of transformation while you do the extraction. So I have also done a video on this where you can actually get the data out in specific structures like JSON, or you can get the data out in a summarized form, in bullet form. So all you need to do is define your prompt in that specifically says what you need to do and how your output should look like, and that can give you the exact answer. So that being said, I think that covers some of the questions that I noted down from the session that I wanted to do a follow-up on. And if you have any other additional questions that you would like to ask, you know where to find me. Just drop me a message on any social media platform, or even add a comment in the videos so that I can reply to you, or even do another follow-up video depending on how the scenario is. So that's it for this video. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in another video. Have a good day and have a good weekend.